Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Come to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. Joining me from what looks like a secret rebel base somewhere deep within the caverns of a Outer Rim planet is Will. Will, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, and good to be back. And yeah, you like my new?
I do. That is
like
very cool.
My new man cave.
and also joining us, evidently a Jedi in hiding from the Empire, Garrett Jones. Garrett, hello.
Hello there.
Hello.
General Kenobi.
Since this episode probably doesn't have a video component when we do it as a podcast, does it?
I don't. No.
So we should probably explain that Garrett is sporting a lovely ensemble, including a Jedi bathrobe.
Yes,
very nice.
It's nice clothes. And plush.
Yeah, he's wearing clothes under the bathrobe, though. Just to be clear. And I am using, since we're using the Zoom app for our recording this week, I'm sporting a backdrop of, I think it's the Rogue One set.
Yeah, it looks like Yavin 4
base set from the Rogue One film. So
very cool. I am just
it looks very Masazi.
Yes. Speaking of which, before we get into our normal topic, I forgot to mention: have either of you heard about they're going to be releasing Rogue One?
Yes, on IMAX.
News. That was news to me. I was excited about that.
A limited release. So
it's only on the day of, right? August 26th.
No, it's this month. It's August. It's August because the the Andor comes out in September, but they're releasing Rogue One earlier, like in August. Yeah, August with.
Wait, I thought Rogue One came out in December.
This is the IMAX version or whatever. No, I just think they're trying to drum up interest in the Andor series, so they're kind
definitely. Oh yeah, definitely. But still, it would be. I'm gonna definitely keep an eye, see what ticket prices are.
If it's more than one day, I might maybe try. But I had read one place that it's a one day only release.
One day only thing.
Fandango, through Fandango, and it's on August 26th, which is sadly a conflict. I can't make it. So.
Well, luckily there's a IMAX theater in Fresno, and I can jam up there if I need to.
Yeah, they have one not far from me. They have an IMAX theater not far from me too. So
awesome.
Definitely, it will definitely be. It also depend on how much they're charging for tickets and if we have the money because of our cruise we're going on. And unfortunately, they're not playing. At least not that I know, they're not playing Rogue One on our cruise. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. All right. So what are we talking about today?
Well, Garrett, you're the one who came up with this topic. So why don't you let us all in on what we're going to be talking about this week?
Well, this week we are talking about a really fun hypothetical. I like hypotheticals. This is our version of What If. Marvel had their version. It was full of zombies. Our version is full of alternate endings or alternate sequences from the various Star Wars films. We're going to just go through the order of the canon. Tonight we'll be starting with episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and looking at scenes, how they could have gone if one thing was changed. And I think we can have a lot of fun with this because there's just a lot of things that could have gone differently. So let's. I was kind of inspired by last week's conversation regarding tweaking the sequel trilogy. This just kind of popped into my head.
Okay, yeah. These are always fun. We've actually done a couple of the kind of off and on throughout the game, but it's always fun to do these what ifs.
Before we get started, though, I feel like we need to do the intro. We need to do the opening for the what if. Okay, like they do in the cartoon. It goes like this. It goes. I can't really. I don't know if my mic will change my voice, but time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. It's a prism of endless possibility. where a single choice can branch out to infinite realities, creating alternate worlds from the ones you know. I guess we are the Watchers. We are your guide through these vast new realities. Follow us and ponder the question, what if? I feel like we have to do that at every episode.
I think so. I think that's great. Well done.
Yes.
All right. So episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Yes.
So I guess we'll just start from the beginning and work our way through.
Yeah. I say that would be a great idea because I mean it gives us some plot points to work through. So the opening, we have gosh, it's been such a long time since I've seen the movie. Starts off with
trade disputes.
What?
Like how all great movies start, trade disputes.
Trade disputes. We have the Jedi are on their way to settle the conflict between.
Well, we can start right there. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are don't make it. Don't make it. They are killed in the initial attack, and don't get out. What happens then?
At that point, I'm pretty sure you roll credits.
Yeah. The only thing I could see happening after that, I mean, obviously there could be, an endless amount of possibilities, but you deal with Queen Amidala. Actually, if you think about it, they are kind of assuming that there's an issue anyway, because the ambassadors haven't arrived yet. If they've already been killed, then they would simply take over the planet, and they would take the queen and her entourage hostage and force her to sign the treaty.
Yeah.
And that would be that. The treaty would be signed. Well, maybe. Unless, I guess you could say Chancellor Valorum could send another Jedi.
Yeah.
And then another Jedi after that. The whole Jedi Council, if you want. Mace Windu shows up. But we could go that way. We could go down that road.
See, I think if we were to go down that rabbit hole, think about how much fun the action set pieces would have been with Mace Windu, because I mean he's probably the only Jedi in existence that could get away with starting to quote Ezekiel 37 and just going off on the droids.
Beautiful. No, but let's go down that road in the sense of you could have the story of the planet of Naboo being under siege. You can see it from Amidala's standpoint. I mean, the one thing that I always thought was interesting was, she was being processed, but what did that mean? When you hear about processing prisoners, my mind goes to like the Holocaust, and they never really got into how dark that could have ended up being. And she was saying, our people are dying, Senator. Like we must do something quickly. And it was so if this was kind of getting even more dire and more dark and brooding than it already was, would there be another side to this? Would Mace and Yoda? I can imagine Mace and Yoda showing up.
That would be pretty interesting. My thought on this is that if Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon had been blown up along with their ship, more than likely, this is the chain of events that I kind of foresaw, is that they would end up, the droids and the Trade Federation would probably end up just forcing Amidala's hand, making her sign the treaty, however legal that is.
Right.
They're already occupying the planet. They're already having skirmishes and battles left and right. I mean, obviously, the people are dying line gives us a little bit of insight on that. At that point, another group of Jedis could be sent out, and as their ships are approaching, the immediate response would be, oh, well, they've sent Jedis before. Let's do the same thing we did before and just try to shoot them out of the sky before they have a chance to land. Which is weird. Like when you look at Star Wars and the way that they do space combat, everything seems to be very linear, and no one's thinking fourth dimensionally. Like you always see like the ring of ships around a planet, but it's like, dude, if you just come in from the other side, those ships aren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
Well, I mean that's a issue with a lot of, you even look at, Star Trek combat. It's very much, it's 3-dimensional, but it's not 4-dimensional like it should
Right.
be.
I think that's a throwback to, understanding like the viewport by which we watch film is a
Yeah.
rectangular box, and
Yep.
that it's just kind of hard to process that beyond it. I not to get on an aside here, but we were mentioning Rogue One. That's one thing I kind of liked about Rogue One, with that one scene with the Death Star, but it was upside down. Like it was reversed.
From
The dish on the bottom.
it's that was pretty brilliant filmmaking.
Oh.
Yes, I thought that was
Yeah.
an excellent little kind of reminder. Like, hey, it doesn't have to be the way just because that's the way we've seen it. Anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, you could go any which way you want, but
Yeah.
I can see a story where Mace and Yoda. This is where my brain takes me. That Mace and Yoda, this is like where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were essentially, they're like the red shirts, if you want to talk Star Trek. They went in on that first go and were obliterated. But then you have Mace and Yoda, and I say them together because they seem to do things in pairs, and they seem to be a pair to me, and they seem to have. I think that they could kind of carry the story.
Yeah, and I think that would make sense too, because you would have the situation where you had a master and his Padawan going in, and they got killed, and that something happened, they were killed. So the Jedi thinking like, well, maybe we need to bring in the quote unquote big guns. So we'll bring in 2 masters, not just 2 masters, but 2 grandmasters.
And then if you think about it, then if that story, now you can imagine that the Trade Federation would again try to attack them, but maybe they could be a little bit more prepared for it and could evade them. And maybe they kind of follow a similar path to what Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon did originally, which was to go down to the planet and stumble across, a Gungan named Jar Jar, and eventually find themselves, rescuing the Queen. And now it's, and going through the whole series of events that we are used to. I could see that kind of playing out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you introduce Anakin with this crew instead of it being Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Now you have Yoda and you have Mace, and they're the ones who discover Anakin as we saw how resistant Mace was to Anakin being trained. It'd be interesting if that was something that was happening more directly.
Yeah.
It sounds like there could be interesting conflict there. The
other factor to that is if Obi-Wan was not there, if he was dead, that changes the entirety of the trajectory of the canon, because at that point you don't have this kind of cocky, teacher trying to teach a young 18-year-old version of Anakin in episode 2, who's trying to live up to his master's expectations, or what he thinks those expectations are, and being a little bit too harsh with Anakin, while at the same time you lose one of your greatest fighters during the Clone Wars. You lose the person who discovers Jango Fett is the base for the clones themselves, and that's just the prequel trilogy. That doesn't even account
we didn't
for.
Get into. We didn't
oh
even
yeah.
Get everything that's come after that. Yeah. So
yeah.
No, it's true. And then I'm trying to say, like, I guess, I know we're talking about the What If cartoon from Marvel, but I'm also thinking, but have either of you ever read Infinities, Star Wars?
Infinities? Yeah, we actually talked a little bit about that last week.
Okay, so in my mind, I'm trying to kind of play it out the way an Infinities comic would play out.
I think it would be interesting to see like an Anakin trained by
Mace.
By Mace, like someone who,
Would he even take on the task?
I don't know. I think honestly, I think you would have had a completely different Anakin, and maybe even one that was better able to stand up to the the up to the dark side better
Yeah.
because of how Mace's power base and how he wielded the Force.
Right.
I think
even
it would have
Mace's
been,
fighting style.
yeah, it was very, very, I mean, almost bordered dark side in many ways. Like he was the closest of all the Jedi, he was the closest to that line. And I think having someone like an Anakin would have been, I think he would have been a really good fit.
Yeah.
For Mace.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of that was a little bit of the conflict between them was in many ways they were very much alike. Like as far as not as far as their worldview, but as far as their attitude and how they kind of clashed. It was like they were similar in many ways. I think they were more similar than they were like
the wrong way because they were so much alike.
Yeah.
So there was that too. But yeah, I think that it could have been a very interesting, different story.
Well, yeah. Well, let's move on.
So back to the original story.
Yeah.
At that point, it would be meeting Jar Jar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we thinking?
I mean, I think not. You take away.
Well, you take away Jar Jar, and you take away the victory at the end of the film.
True. You could do that. You could do that a different way.
I shouldn't say you take away the victory at the end of the film. You take away the diversion.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I do believe that diversion was necessary. So it could have changed the course of the end of the film, and it could have resulted. It
certainly would have. And I'm trying to think large scope here. I mean, if you get rid of Jar Jar, if say for example the droids on their stat vehicles drive, they fly by and shoot him down, he gets crushed underneath the droid movers. You don't have Qui-Gon being owed any kind of life debt. You get no help from the Gungans during the fight. Because the Gungans at that point were completely ambivalent to anything happening on the surface.
Which means it takes that much longer. The speediest way to get to the Naboo is through the planet's core. And
exactly.
You don't have that now. So now you have to go around the planet or go another direction. That's going to take longer, and that's going to delay things, and it's going to cause the domino effect that could turn.
Exactly. But then if we look at the larger scope of that domino effect, you don't have Jar Jar becoming the first Gungan senator from Naboo.
Yeah.
Aha.
It's still just the human population.
Yes.
And then in a larger scope, you don't have Jar Jar having his own little fun love spy adventure in the midst of the later seasons of the Clone Wars. And then you don't have him voting for more emergency powers for Palpatine.
Although I do think Palpatine being the way Palpatine is, he would have just found another.
He would have finagled it.
Yeah, he would have
found another way to get that to happen.
Yeah.
At least that's my thought on that. So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, there's everybody, everybody has a tapestry.
Yes.
And it's definitely it can show you that with Jar Jar, even a simple Gungan.
I think one of the issues that we're going to run into, and we've already kind of run into it a little bit, is if you change anything with Anakin, you basically negate the entire original trilogy. Like anything happens to Anakin other than him surviving and being trained to become a Jedi, you kind of negate the original trilogy, which is fine if we want to go down that route, but we just have to kind of know that without Anakin is the linchpin for everything. Like the entire, I always make the joke, people always say, well, we need a Darth Vader movie, and I said we've had 6.
Yeah.
It's called Star Wars. The entire first 6 movies are Anakin's story.
Yeah, no, I
Yes.
get that. I get that. But again,
but it's fun. But I think like I said, we just have to kind of know, people, that are listening have to know that any changes that we make, especially to the main characters, are going to drastically change the rest of the trilogies. Mm-hmm. Because without Anakin, you have no Darth Vader. Without Darth, and you also have no Luke or Leia. So
this is very true.
Yeah.
Well, that's why in my mind, I'm kind of, like I said, I'm sticking to like the Infinities notebook.
Yeah.
Where I'm changing one aspect in my head and seeing, how, but trying to keep every other aspect of what's going on.
Yeah.
At least along the same path as much as possible. You know what I mean? I recognize, like, for example, that's why I was saying, yes, in the first instance, Obi-Wan and let's say Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were killed. Well, could we have a different, but no less impactful dynamic with Mace and Yoda taking on that training role, one of them or both of them? And in terms of Jar Jar not existing, is there another way that the Naboo people can make peace with the Gungans and join together?
I mean, unless you just make a different Jar Jar, and not a different character. What I mean by that is a different character to be in that spot of being the creature or the person who the Gungan who they run into, without being, that's the only way I can think of it, is you just change who it is.
Okay.
I mean, that's one way to do it, is you still have that sort of interaction with the Gungans. It's just not through Jar Jar. You do it through another. You'd have to do it through another means.
Right.
Either maybe there is, to protect to protect their city, they have guards at the that come up to the surface, and the Jedi run into the guards.
Right.
Something like that. There's some sort of interaction like that, and then they're taken to the Gungan home city capital, and then you have the sort of
Well, I would think that let's face it. We're going to go through this, and we're going to go through other aspects, and there might be some that are going to seem like they could, be woven into a story better than others.
Right.
You know what I mean? That like Garrett was saying too. Each one of these things, each one of these changes could not only affect the rest of this movie, but the rest of the saga, and even into the sequel trilogy, perhaps. So, but again, let's not take ourselves too seriously. It's just,
right.
We're just
having fun.
We're
having fun.
Well, go on. Mark. Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's move on. Let's move on to another aspect. So after Jar Jar, let's say everything goes as normal. Meets Boss Nass, takes the bongo, goes to the Naboo to Theed, rescues the princess. Stop me if there's anything you want to try different here.
They don't rescue the princess.
What?
They don't rescue Amidala.
You mean
Amidala, like they get there, they have the confrontation, but Amidala dies. Amidala is killed before they're able to rescue. They're still able to get the rest of the royal court out, but Amidala dies.
I want to jump in.
Okay.
Now, we said before, if we kill Amidala, if we kill any of the main characters,
I think you can get away with killing Amidala, because then you can just maybe have a second love interest for Anakin.
Yeah, but I don't know. I was gonna say, my thought was kill the royal bodyguard, the double.
Oh,
but not let anybody know it.
Oh, that
not Keira Knightley.
Well, Keira
Because
Knightley.
without Keira Knightley, we don't have a whole slew of pirate movies.
Now, I think there's a story there. No, seriously.
That would be interesting.
I think
yeah.
there's a story. If you killed off Keira Knightley, sorry, well, just freeze her up to go to do the pirate movies. But anyway, if you killed off the who doesn't have to any one of those characters, hey, kill off Coppola, okay? She was not much of an actress anyway. So watch Godfather 3 if you don't believe me.
Oh, I get the reference.
Oh.
Great director though. She's a good director. But if you kill off one of it's like like the beginning of episode 2 was. We thought that the queen was killed, or the senator was killed, right? Well, if you kill off one, and we the audience think that the queen has now been killed, and the Jedi escape with the remaining handmaidens and some of the security and everything else, and they try to regroup to see what they can figure out and report back to Coruscant and stuff, and it won't. And it's only at the last minute you discover you could have everything kind of happen.
You could even have the Trade Federation, because they think the queen is dead. They set up a puppet government for another queen to is like
you could do all of that, right? And you can even follow the story to some degree, like it is, where this entourage, hyperdrive banks up, R2 fixes it, yay R2, got to land someplace, fix the hyperdrive. That's got to replace it. It's got to land on Tatooine. A few of the Naboo people and Qui-Gon and go looking, and Jar Jar, if you want, they go looking for they meet Watto, and that's when they meet Anakin, and Anakin meets the handmaiden, but at this time we just think she's a handmaiden.
Yeah.
And it's so it almost tells a similar story, but it becomes that much more, it has that much more gravity to it when you find out that not only is the queen not dead, but it's this girl who's the queen. So I mean, it would have been a whole different way even for us, the audience, because we would not have known. Like all through Phantom Menace, we understood who Queen Amidala was. We understood that Padme. I don't know if everybody realized that.
Did they?
It took me a few watches to figure that one out.
It did too. Because I mean, did they call when she's in disguise as the handmaiden? Did they call her Padme?
Yes, they did.
Because that's the thing.
Padme,
like,
but they
wouldn't that have been like in the records to be like Amidala, full name, Queen Amidala, full name, Padme Neber Amidala?
No, it didn't. I understood it right from the beginning, only because I knew that I gobbled up every TV guide and Entertainment Earth article I could read, and it was always Natalie Portman playing Queen Amidala. So I knew that she was Queen Amidala, and then you see her face, and Queen Amidala is always decked out with the white makeup and the fancy, dots on her cheeks and stuff, and all of her great hairstyles. But then you just see the other one who went by Padme, and it was Natalie Portman. So it was just, if you knew who Natalie Portman was, or the name Natalie Portman, and the face that you associated with looking at all the, advertising leading up to it, then it just made sense. What I didn't understand was that every time we looked at the Queen, it wasn't always Natalie Portman. Sometimes it was Keira Knightley, and that, because those two look so much alike. That was what that's what threw me. But anyway, so I don't know. I just thought that it could be an interesting there could be a different type. It would be a very similar story than what we're used to, what we already know. But it would be a slight different weight to it if you honestly believe that the Queen was played by another person and was killed, and because it was played by Keira Knightley, and she was killed, and then Padme stays as Padme for the duration of the movie until close to the end or near the end, when you realize that she's actually the queen. I think that would have just been something different. That could
be interesting. Well, because the thought that occurred to me during this whole thing, and again, it kind of goes back to the, if we remove any of the main characters, it completely changes the trajectory of the entire saga. My thought would be, what happened if the hyperdrive didn't malfunction and they were able to make it to Coruscant without having to stop off on Tatooine? How would Anakin then have been fit back into the story?
Oh, I like that.
Because we could still fit him back in. I'm not saying get rid of him entirely, but what happens if they go to Coruscant first, and on their way back they make a stop off in Tatooine because they're being, at that point they know they're being hunted by Darth Maul.
Okay.
What if Darth Maul started his hunt on Coruscant instead of traveling all the way across the galaxy first?
No, there's something there. I also think that now, but I will say that the bright center of the universe that we are farthest from, that is Tatooine, I feel as though there needs to be a reason why they end up there. Like, and the way they did it this time was that it was Tatooine. And if you think about it, the Phantom Menace was our first introduction, was the galaxy's first real introduction to Tatooine, because it was all by accident, right? It was all hyperdrive. They needed to stop someplace, and they needed to go someplace that wasn't controlled by the Trade Federation. So they went someplace that was close by, that was controlled by the Hutts. So, but everything else that happened after that in the saga story, and even in, Boba Fett, Mandalorian, sequel trilogy to some degree, it all stemmed from that first entrance into Tatooine. So yeah, I agree. We'd have to get back to Tatooine somehow.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would be like, some grandiose reason that we need to do this, and the only way to do it is to go to Tatooine. It would have to be some kind of like last minute thing. Oh, like a damaged thing or something's happening.
Yeah.
End up on Tatooine by some randomness, and that's how you
could do something like this. Like, they need to get away really quick, so they need to go to hyperdrive, but they don't have time to put in, any type of navigation, real quick. So they just have to do a quick jump to the nearest system, that, which happens to be Tatooine. And because the way they did the jump, when they come out of hyperdrive, it damages their hyperdrive, so then they have to land because the jump damaged their hyperdrive.
Or maybe they just need to refuel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you still need a way to get that contact with Anakin, and you still need to get a way that they would have to need something from Watto in order to get that.
Well, that's true, because you do need to get
because just having fuel,
Tatooine, you got to get
just getting fuel in Tatooine, that's not going to cost the price of a slave.
True.
It's going to need something a little bit more,
So here's a what if for you guys.
Okay.
This just popped into my head now as we're talking, because we keep circling back to Tatooine. What if Watto was susceptible to Jedi mind tricks and not only sold them the parts for Republic credits, he was also susceptible to letting Anakin and Shmi go free?
Ooh, all right. Okay. So on the one hand, you have negated the need for a pod race, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
So in negating that need, you have now not allowed or shown Anakin to demonstrate any real use of the Force. So that would make things a little bit odd. But maybe something, you could put something else in its place.
Well, I mean, you already had the sort of inkling that he had, because when you had the conversation between when they were at the Skywalker house, and he mentioned that he's a pod race, that he's raced pods before.
But he wouldn't even get that far if Qui-Gon. Oh, then again, if Qui-Gon had already. Well, I guess if Qui-Gon,
they already talked, because remember they land there.
Yeah, but he goes right to Watto's shop first.
Yeah.
And he does the credits will do fine. No, they won't. But if he had said it, credits will do fine. Yes, they will. And, he would tell him. But then maybe they would need time to install the hyperdrive, and if sandstorm still came up, so they would maybe stop for shelter, and then they still get to know.
Well, instead of doing an actual race, maybe Qui-Gon goes on a pod ride with Anakin just to see what it's all about and see how good he is. Because I mean, the pod race really is, as long as it is in the entire film, it serves a really good purpose for storytelling, in that it's showing just how clever and how capable Anakin is as a pilot, and how instinctively connected to the Force he is. If we just have him tell us that, we don't get proof of that. So, but if he's getting ready to go free and he wants to do one last jump on his pod before they leave planet, maybe have Qui-Gon ride alongside him, so he can see just how skilled Anakin is, which would then further, prompt him to want to train Anakin. And having Shmi there would be one less thing that Palpatine could use or hold over Anakin.
Yeah, I think without the death of Shmi in episode 2, I mean, that was kind of the beginning of the downfall in many ways of Anakin. Was that loss?
That's the beginning. Now, but the other thing you were saying earlier is that if Shmi was also freed, and we had this relationship between Anakin and Shmi, that this mother-son relationship, that, I mean, imagine if they were together, and then some other mishap when Anakin was older, where he would lose her, some other accident.
I mean, that would definitely be something that Palpatine could definitely manipulate and use.
Yes, and he would have had all those other years of attachment to his mother,
which would deepen the attachment. But on the one hand, it could also, if he matures well enough, it could potentially be something that he's able to maybe work through.
Yeah.
But again, if we're wanting him to still continue going down that dark path, well, yeah, we could find another. We could kill her off sooner.
Yeah. So
maybe she gets accidentally crushed by a droid tank, or Jar Jar accidentally drops one of those electro discharge balls on her.
Yeah. All right.
Jar Jar really is clumsy.
All right, move on a little bit, because how are we doing here? We got about a few more minutes. So, well, Anakin loses the pod race. Maybe, and let's even go one step further. Was totally going to win, but then Sebulba cheated some other way. That was it. Does Qui-Gon go behind his word and go back on his word and just take him?
Qui-Gon's crafty like that.
Yeah, I think he would. I definitely think he would. I think he would find a way to make sure, especially if he believes that the living force is telling him this kid is special. If he believes, Qui-Gon's the type that if he believes that this is what the Force is telling him what should happen, then he's going to find a way to make sure that it happens.
Well, not just that though. If we go back, Qui-Gon's always good at looking for loopholes in whatever he's doing.
Yeah. And
so for the loophole, it might be, okay, I won't take the kid. He goes back to the ship. Hey, Obi-Wan, I've got a job for you. Sends Obi-Wan to go rescue Anakin from Watto. They fly off, and Watto's none the wiser.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. That could work.
Yeah, and then he could even say something like, if Watto, calls up on, Galactic Skype or whatever, wondering where his thing is, he's like, hey, he's like, I wasn't the one who it was my apprentice, went off on his own on this mission. I had no control over him. He just went off on his own and did this. And he's like, but now that they're here, now that they're under Republic, under the Republic, I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do.
Right.
Because there's no way the Hutts are going to go to war against the Republic.
What if the Hutts go to war against the Republic?
Wow, there goes an entire cartel of criminal organizations.
Use their
I mean, sure, they might be able to withstand a couple of lightsaber strikes to the abdomen, but Chad the Hutt is not going to win this one.
Chad the Hutt.
No matter how confident Chad the Hutt is. No.
Oh, that just reminded me. Have you guys ever seen Chad Vader?
Yes.
Yes.
Chad Vader.
No, the whole Chad the Hutt thing though comes up from this meme I've seen circling on Instagram the last couple of days, and it's one of those like therapy memes where it says Chad the Hutt isn't real, he can't hurt you, and then it shows you a picture of this like super bulked out Hutt. It was like massive forearms, and I'm like, that's God, it's like the Jersey Shore came to the galaxy.
Someone from Jersey, I must apologize anytime somebody says the Jersey Shore. There's so much more than that show, please. Most of them are from New York anyway. So all right,
that made my night.
Very good.
Yes.
Let's move on. What other what ifs can we come up with here? So Padres, let's see. He wins the Padres. He's freed. He goes. John, go.
I was gonna say, since we're getting kind of low on time, I think. But the big one, Qui-Gon lives. Qui-Gon trains Anakin.
I think that's a catalyst. That's a paradigm shift in the story.
That's a big one.
We could see Qui-Gon, because I always felt that Qui-Gon was kind of a renegade Jedi, and he understood his whole desire to understand the living force, which is something I've never heard before or since anybody else say. Understanding at least in the films, the living force. I always felt that was a different take on it than the other Jedi. And I think that if there was any Jedi that could handle the training of a Jedi that was old, a Padawan that was older and had to deal with attachments and missed his mother, I feel like Qui-Gon could have figured out what to do, and could have he himself played a father figure to Anakin as well.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right on that.
At least the way Liam Neeson portrayed him.
Mm-hmm.
And
I always kind of looked at Qui-Gon as being like kind of like the equivalent of like the Jedi hippie.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. I mean, yeah, a lot of other Jedi had long hair, and you see that frequently, but given his propensity to just kind of follow like this natural course, like he's trusting his instincts, which is something Jedi usually don't do. They trust the Force, sure, but he allowed his instincts to be attuned to the Force far more readily than his mind. Yeah. And so he always kind of trusted his gut a lot more. And there's kind of a more emotional, an emotional connection there. And so like while the Gray are kind of their own thing, I think Qui-Gon was kind of closer towards the Gray than any other Jedi was prior to him.
Yeah.
With the exception of Ahsoka, who became kind of like the Gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's true.
Yeah,
That's true. I definitely,
but
I
also
agree wholeheartedly with that.
be careful, Garrett. A lot of times you mention gray Jedi, and that sets people off. That gray Jedi don't exist. There's no such thing. It's
Oh, I just think we're just having a conversation.
yeah. But people get bent out of shape, and when you start
Oh, if you notice, I said the
Jedi,
gray, not the gray Jedi.
yes, this is true.
I'm being very clear here because by that point, as far as Ahsoka is concerned, by the time we get to Rebels and her appearances in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, she is not a Jedi by title. She is
A Force
a gray.
user.
She's a Force user. She's still a Force adept, if you want to be technical about it. But her focus is more on finding balance between the two extremes of the Jedi and the Sith. She's willing to give into her emotions. She's willing to do the things that Jedi normally would try to avoid, like killing an opponent.
Yeah.
Especially like someone like Obi-Wan with his fighting style being Ceresu, his style would be, let me avoid the conflict as much as possible, and wear you down with my resistance.
Yeah.
She's like, I'll be a little bit more aggressive once once negotiations have really kind of run their course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark's getting that late night vibe.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. It's,
Milk and cookies. Milk and cookies.
milk and cookies. Oh.
Well, it's okay.
No, it's
No, I mean, let's wrap it up. We can go to,
okay.
We'll go one last one. Okay.
Okay.
Darth Maul does not die. Which, well, I guess you could say.
Well, I mean, kind of didn't anyway.
But let's put it differently. Let's say he didn't even get sliced in half. Let's say it was a knocked unconscious, so you could be the villain of the week in the next movie. Could Darth Maul? And I guess this what if might. All right. We're gonna leave this one hanging because let's say let's use this to tie into the next one we do this with. What if Darth Maul survived and continued to be the apprentice in episode 2?
Ooh.
Okay, but that ties into now where we're going to hold off on that until we get to an episode, the what ifs of episode 2. So we all have to remember that we had this conversation.
Yes, yeah.
But that Darth Maul is going to be the villain, the heavy, if you will. They're still at the right hand of Palpatine or of Sidious, I should say. And he's going to be the heavy. How would episode 2 possibly play out? Instead of having that regalness of the Christopher Lee's Dooku, you have that just pure rage of Darth Maul continue, maybe even worse if he wasn't able to complete his mission in the first movie.
So many. I want to jump the gun and just go right into episode 2, but see, as a storyteller, the juices inside my brain are like, oh, you have to share this. You have to do. Let's start spitballing this because this is going to be fun, and I'm going to be patient.
Yes.
just weave your new tapestries. And think about that, and we'll continue with that. I enjoyed this. This was interesting.
Yeah.
It was a good exercise. And I appreciated that we talked a little bit of some ground rules, just because a story can go wherever it wants. A story doesn't have to be. We don't even have to have a story about Anakin. It doesn't even have to be about Luke and Leia. It could be completely go in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
It's just that for a basis of reference, you probably want to keep some of them at least surviving for as long as they have in the story we know, just to kind of see how things can go along differently. But I'm not saying that's.
I came up with a what if scenario that gets them landing on Tatooine anyway.
Oh,
okay.
All right. Well, let's hear that.
They bypassed it originally.
Yeah.
They get a call from Quinlan Vos, who is seen in the background of episode 1. Quinlan Vos is there. He's hanging out at the tavern, and he has encountered a kid who is strong in the Force, and the midi-chlorian count is high.
All right.
Ooh, and that could write, and that could be, if you wanted
Directed
to, that
by
could
George
go,
Lucas. Yeah, da-da-da-da.
and that goes straight into, and then you have episode 2.
Where we get to have another episode 3 years later with the same kid. No. Poor little Jake Lloyd. Oh
Man.
By the way, Casey, I just want to say I met Jake Lloyd, nicest guy. My daughter met him when she was really little, and he couldn't have been nicer. He was older at this point, but he could not have been nicer. And I wish him well. I hope he's doing okay. Anyway, so.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, as we wrap things up, like we always do, Will, why don't you tell the people out there in internet land where they can find you at?
Well, in internet land, I live on YouTube in Darth Tuba's Star Wars unboxing show. That is Darth, like Darth Vader, but instead of Vader, it's Tuba, like the instrument. And I do an unboxing channel, lots of great toys and collectibles that I like to unbox. And there's been just a huge amount of stuff going on. I just got back from Galaxy's Edge, and we've had a whole bunch of neat episodes that are in the can ready to get released. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Darth Tuba. There's also Darth Tuba Star Wars unboxing page on Facebook, and you can email me darthtuba77@gmail.com.
All right, and Garrett, what about you? Where can they find you at?
I live mostly on Instagram and YouTube as well. Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at GKJ_publishing, where I will say stupid, inane things on Twitter just to annoy people. And then on Instagram, I am mostly posting about the author interviews that I'm doing this month for Author Awareness August. Got a great new episode coming out this next week with a memoirist named Ruby Carlson. My channel on YouTube is also called GKJ Publishing, super original. Keeping everything streamlined, just like Will does with Darth Tuba. So.
Nice. As for us right here, if you want to get a hold of us, the easiest way to do that is through our email address, which is warofthestars1@gmail.com. That is also our Twitter handle. Go to just search War of the Stars on Instagram and on Facebook for the Facebook group. Check those out. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/War of the Stars, or you can go to our Spreadshirt shop and just search War of the Stars for the cool merch, which you can't see it, but Will is wearing one of our t-shirt designs that we have. That's actually one of my favorite ones. I like that design. There's one I tried to do through another t-shirt design store that was actually an 8-bit. So It took that basic design and turned it into like an 8-bit Nintendo 8-bit type thing, which is really cool. But yeah, you can go there, check out all the merch we have at our Spreadshirt store. Check us out wherever fine podcasts are heard. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast if you're there. Anchor.fm. Basically, just wherever you listen to podcasts, just type in War of the Stars, the Star Wars podcast, and you'll be able to check us out there. Oh, that's a lot.
Yes.
As always, remember, this isn't just my Star Wars. This isn't just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
Till the spire, everyone.
With you.